There's a moment in life that doesn't come with a warning. It just arrives. Like walking into a room you've been in 1,000 times and suddenly realizing it doesn't recognize you anymore. Nothing has changed around you, but somehow everything feels off. The coffee doesn't taste the same. The conversations sound recycled. Even the mirror seems to reflect someone you've already outgrown. These moments don't scream. They hum. A low, constant frequency buzzing beneath your thoughts, nudging you to look closer. It's not restlessness. It's recognition. The recognition that the version of you who built this reality is quietly stepping aside, and something new is asking to be let in. If this resonates even a little, it's a sign you've found the right place. Consider subscribing not just to this channel, but to the version of you that's ready to evolve. Every video we release is a frequency shift, a signal tuned to awaken the parts of you waiting in silence. The mistake most people make is waiting for transformation to look like fireworks. They think it'll be obvious, loud, maybe even Instagrammable. But that's not how real change works. Real change is inconvenient. It asks you to walk away from comfort before the replacement arrives. It invites you to trust the empty space. And in that space, you're tempted to fill it too soon. With the old distractions, the old routines, the people who love your past but don't see your future. But the void isn't a punishment. It's preparation. It's the energetic pause between who you've been and who you're becoming. You're not here to fix your life. You're here to outgrow it. Fixing assumes something's broken. Outgrowing assumes evolution. And when you realize your job isn't to mend what's fading, but to expand beyond its limits, everything changes. You stop asking how to feel better, and you start asking who you're becoming. Think of your life as a signal tower. Every thought, emotion, and belief is a broadcast, and the reality you live in is just the echo. That's why effort alone doesn't shift your reality. You can hustle, plan, and grind, but if your frequency is still tuned to scarcity or fear, the field responds accordingly. The most powerful shift you can make isn't behavioral. It's vibrational. It's not what you do, but who you are while doing it. And who you are isn't a fixed identity. It's a broadcast, a posture, a pattern of emotional signals you send out whether you realize it or not. You don't become your next self by force. You become it by resonance, by matching the internal climate to the reality you want to experience. This isn't about pretending to be something you're not. It's about remembering the version of you that already exists on another frequency and choosing to tune in. The reason most people feel stuck is because they keep reporting their past to the present. They wake up and emotionally rehearse what they already know. Their pain, their regrets, their limitations. And each time they do, they stabilize a timeline that no longer fits. Freedom begins the moment you stop explaining yourself to your past. When you no longer owe an explanation to the version of you that settled, tolerated, or stayed small. Not because that version was wrong, but because it served its purpose. And now you're choosing something else. This is not a mindset shift. It's a signal shift. Your brain may understand the logic, but your body must feel the truth. Coherence happens when your thoughts, feelings, and actions stop contradicting each other and begin harmonizing with a future that already exists vibrationally. Have you ever had a day where something just clicked? Where you walked differently, spoke with more clarity, or felt lighter without knowing why? That was a temporary shift in broadcast. But the goal is to make it permanent. To not just visit your new self, but live there. And to live there, you must release the habit of returning. Returning to doubt. Returning to proof. Returning to stories that convince you you're not ready. You are not here to gather more evidence. You are here to become the evidence, to be the proof before it appears. This is where transformation begins, not with action, but with access. Accessing the frequency of your next identity and letting it rewire your posture, your choices, your expectations. And that access happens not through time, but through decision. A decision so clear, the field has no choice but to respond. So ask yourself this: what frequency am I rehearsing today? And does it match the life I say I want? Because the field isn't listening to your goals. It's listening to your vibration. And the clearest signal always wins. Every day you wake up, your body runs a script before you even open your eyes. It floods your system with the same hormones, the same thoughts, the same emotions that have defined your identity for years. Before your feet touch the ground, your past is already living through you. And that's not awareness. That's automation. This automation is not random, it's practiced. Your nervous system has memorized your identity so well that it doesn't need your permission anymore. You say you want change, but every cell in your body is still in love with the familiar pain. Not because it feels good, but because it feels known. And known equals safe. But safety is not the same as alignment. Safety can be a cage dressed up as comfort. The truth is, most people are addicted to their own suffering, not consciously but chemically. Your body gets used to the cortisol, the anxiety, the looping thoughts, and until you interrupt that chemistry, you're not changing. You're recycling. Disruption is sacred. It doesn't feel good, but it's good for you. The moment you interrupt a thought pattern, you're reclaiming energy. The moment you pause the habitual reaction, you create space. And in that space, the new broadcast has a chance to take root. Not because you forced it, but because you made room. That's why breakthroughs often begin with breakdowns. When the loop collapses, your identity panics. It wants to fix, explain, restore what feels missing. But here's the twist, nothing is missing. What's happening is that the false self is losing control. And your truth is being given the mic for the first time in a long time. The voice of your truth doesn't shout. It speaks in a tone you've been ignoring. Stillness, clarity, knowing. It doesn't justify. It doesn't beg. It simply is. And when you hear it, really hear it, you realize how loud your survival programming has been all along. This programming isn't personal. It's patterned, handed down through generations, reinforced by society, cemented by repetition. But just because it's familiar doesn't mean it's fate. Your programming is not your prophecy. It's just the first layer. And you're here to go deeper. Deeper means discomfort, but not the kind that wounds, the kind that wakes, like stretching muscles that haven't moved in years. You'll feel resistance, not because you're broken, but because you're growing. And growth is noisy, cracks, shifts, and reorganizes what no longer fits. There will be moments where you question everything. You'll think, maybe I should go back. Maybe I was wrong. But that's not intuition. That's withdrawal. You're detoxing from the frequency that once defined your entire personality. And detox feels like doubt. Don't mistake withdrawal for misalignment. Doubt is not a sign to turn around. It's a sign you're passing the edge of the known. And the unknown is where the field begins to listen differently. It listens not for your logic, but your conviction. Your willingness to move without sight. Conviction doesn't mean certainty. It means choice. A choice that vibrates louder than your fear, louder than your stories, louder than the opinions of people who only know your previous chapter. Because their comfort with who you were is not a valid reason to delay who you're becoming. Your evolution will trigger echoes. Echoes in people, places, and thoughts that try to pull you back. Not out of malice, but out of memory. You're changing the rhythm, and the old instruments don't know how to play in this new key. Let them fade, or teach them your new song. But don't stop the music, because every time you delay your shift to make others comfortable, you betray your own frequency. And the field can't respond to a broadcast you keep muting. So, the question becomes, what are you afraid of losing that's already energetically gone? We fear loss because we confuse it with failure. But in quantum terms, loss is realignment. When something leaves your life after a frequency shift, it's not punishment, it's precision. The field is clearing space for coherence. And that space is sacred. Don't rush to fill it with yesterday. Let it be empty. Let it echo. Let it teach you how much noise you were tolerating before silence arrived. Because in that silence, your future self starts to whisper. And if you stay long enough, the whisper becomes a guide. A compass calibrated not to safety but to soul. And the soul doesn't follow steps. It follows signals. That's why you don't need a roadmap, you need resonance. You're not here to map the whole journey. You're here to become the version of you who already lives at the destination. And from there, everything else begins to unfold. Most people think reality shifts when you change your job, your location, your circle. But real shifts don't start with motion, they start with signal. Before anything visible moves, the invisible must adjust. The frequency must recalibrate. And when it does, life begins to rearrange around your new center. It starts subtly. A conversation feels off. A favorite song no longer resonates. The small talk you used to tolerate feels like static. It's not that the world has changed. It's that you have. You're no longer synchronized with the broadcast that used to define your life. And that's not disconnection. That's data. Reality is not personal. It's responsive. It's a mirror, not a judge. And when you realize that everything around you is reacting to who you're being, not what you're doing, you stop blaming and start broadcasting with intention. You stop reacting and start directing, not with force, but with frequency. People ask, how do I know if I'm shifting? And the answer is simple: silence. Not the peaceful kind. The awkward, strange, unfamiliar silence that comes when your old frequency can no longer find an echo. That's not emptiness. That's realignment in progress. Stay there. This is where most jumpers fall back. Not because the shift wasn't working, but because it didn't happen fast enough for their ego. They panic in the pause. They misinterpret the void as failure when it's actually the new timeline calibrating itself around you. And calibration takes coherence, not control. So pause right here. What did this spark in you so far? If something clicked, even if you can't name it yet, drop it in the comments. Let this be more than content. Let it be a conversation. Your story might be the exact frequency someone else needed to hear today. And if this is resonating, consider subscribing so we can grow together in this frequency. Now back to the shift. As the field begins to adjust, it doesn't just bring in the new, it removes the false. This is the part that hurts, because clarity often looks like loss. But what's falling away is not your future. It's the interference. The things you couldn't see clearly while you were still entangled with an expired version of you. Sometimes that means people drift. Sometimes opportunities dissolve. And you'll be tempted to take it personally. But remember, the field is mathematical. It's matching, not judging. If something leaves when your signal changes, it was never aligned to begin with, it was attached to who you were. That realization can feel lonely. You're in a new frequency, but the world hasn't caught up. You've stopped reacting like your old self, but you haven't fully built the new life yet. This is the in-between, the sacred instability. And if you can hold your signal here, everything will start to bend around your new resonance. But holding the signal doesn't mean perfection. It means consistency. It means choosing the new vibration even when it's not reinforced yet. Even when no one's watching, especially then. Because the field hears you loudest when you're not performing, when you're just being. So how do you stay there? You keep your nervous system in check. You breathe like the version of you who's already aligned. You speak less from fear and more from presence. You stop explaining your shift and start embodying it. You stop chasing proof and start being proof. Being proof isn't loud. It's clean. It doesn't try to convince. It simply radiates. And people feel it. They may not understand you, but they'll notice something different. They'll say, "You've changed," and you'll smile. Not because you have the words to explain it, but because you no longer need to. At some point, something beautiful happens. The tension you once mistook for failure becomes neutrality. And that neutrality is power. You no longer panic when things don't move fast. You no longer flinch when the old timeline calls. You've become emotionally unavailable to who you used to be. That's when the field locks in. That's when reality starts to show signs. A message from someone you've never met. An idea you've never had. A door opens without you touching the handle. This isn't coincidence. This is coherence. This is the response to the signal you've been holding all along. And here's the paradox. The less you chase it, the faster it arrives. Because chasing tells the field you don't have it. Holding tells the field, I'm already there. That's when reality bends. Not because you pushed it, but because you finally matched it. So pause again and feel this. What version of you is trying to come alive right now? What story are you ready to retire, not because it was wrong, but because it's complete? Drop a comment, share your signal, or simply breathe as your next self for 30 seconds longer than usual. That's how shifts stick. There comes a point in the shift where you realize you've been chasing things that were always supposed to chase you. Not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. The opportunities, the people, the clarity, they were never meant to be hunted. They were meant to respond to a signal you were always capable of holding, but rarely dared to. This realization isn't instant. It's earned in silence. In the stillness where your old self can no longer distract you with its patterns. It's in that moment, between breath and doubt, where you ask, who am I without the chase? And the answer isn't a title or a role. It's a frequency. It's resonance. Your reality doesn't reflect your worth. It reflects your willingness to hold your new signal even when the evidence isn't visible yet. Most people collapse here. They mistake delay for denial. They think silence means rejection. But in quantum terms, silence is signal processing. It's the field organizing itself around you. Your task is not to scream louder. It's to broadcast clearer. Because the field isn't deaf, it's exact. It doesn't respond to how badly you want something. It responds to how coherently you are being it. And coherence means your thoughts, your actions, your emotions, and your posture are speaking the same language. This is why intentions alone don't shift reality. You can set 1,000 goals, write affirmations, and recite mantras. But if your nervous system is still rehearsing fear, the field reflects the fear. Not to punish you, but to mirror what's active, what's alive, what's true in your broadcast. So ask yourself, what am I energetically practicing right now? Not what am I thinking, but what am I feeling repeatedly? Because that emotional rehearsal is what becomes your default frequency. And default frequencies become realities. It's not about controlling every thought. It's about guiding the signal. The same way a musician doesn't force every note. They tune the instrument. And you, too, are an instrument. Your body, your breath, your voice. Each one a dial in the broadcast of your becoming. And here's the part no one tells you. You're allowed to tune out noise. The conversations that drain you. The habits that dull you. The expectations that no longer fit. You're allowed to say, that's not my frequency anymore. Not because it's bad, but because it's expired. When you stop apologizing for your clarity, you start commanding your timeline. Not with force, not with effort, with energy, with posture, with presence. You become the kind of person who shifts the room without speaking, because your signal enters first. And when your signal leads, the field responds. You'll see it in small ways first. A message at the perfect time. A conversation that confirms what your intuition whispered weeks ago. You're not imagining it. You're remembering it. Because the future doesn't come to you, you return to it. The future version of you isn't waiting. It's broadcasting. It's already alive. The only question is, are you still entangled with the version that doubts? Or have you collapsed that identity enough times to let the new one breathe? To collapse an identity doesn't mean to hate it. It means to stop feeding it, to stop rehearsing its language, defending its limits, explaining its fears. You say, thank you, and you turn, not with guilt, with grace, with precision, with clarity that feels like calm. And in that clarity, you'll notice the air feels different. Time slows down. You make decisions with your body instead of your mind. You trust silence more than opinions. And in that space, you begin to feel your power, not as something to chase, but as something that was never gone. Power doesn't return when you succeed. It returns when you remember. When you remember you are not here to convince the world. You are here to anchor a new signal again and again, until the world has no choice but to recognize it. You are not becoming someone new. You are becoming someone familiar to your soul, to your higher self, to the frequency that's always been just out of reach until now. And now it's not out of reach. It's here, in your breath, in your posture, in your decision. So take a breath, a real one, the kind your future self breathes when the noise finally fades. And hold that frequency for a few seconds longer than usual. Let it stretch, let it settle, let it speak. And if it says, "I'm ready," then listen, because that's not just a feeling. That's your new broadcast checking in. There's something sacred about making a decision no one sees. A quiet inner choice that shifts your entire field, even if nothing around you changes right away. That kind of decision is frequency encoded. It's not about force. It's about fluency. And when you become fluent in your future, you stop translating it through fear. The world won't always understand your leap. Not because it's wrong, but because it's rare. You're not choosing a logical path. You're choosing a vibrational one. And vibrational paths don't require directions. They require trust. The kind of trust that doesn't ask for permission, just presence. And presence, real presence, is louder than any affirmation. When you embody a new state of being, the field takes note. It doesn't ask if you believe in yourself. It mirrors whether you are yourself. That version of you beyond doubt, beyond need, beyond delay, pure signal. But here's the challenge. The world you used to belong to will test your volume. Not to stop you, but to confirm you. Old patterns will echo back with one question: "Are you sure?" And in that moment, your answer can't be words. It must be embodiment. Your breath must say yes. Because the moment you blink, the moment you slip back into apology, the timeline flickers. Not because you're weak, but because you forgot the frequency. But when you hold the signal, when your nervous system relaxes into the new code, you cross the threshold without noise. And crossing isn't cinematic. It's often still, almost boring. No applause, no spotlight. Just you walking differently, responding slower, choosing quieter. And then one day you look up and realize you're no longer surviving. You're transmitting. And reality is finally catching up. Real transformation doesn't need a witness. The field is the witness. And it remembers. Every shift, every moment you chose coherence over chaos, integrity over habit. It adds up. Until one day the change feels normal, and the life you once visualized becomes your baseline. This is why you don't need to force manifestation. You need to stabilize vibration, because manifestation isn't attraction, it's reflection. And what you reflect is not what you think. It's what you consistently feel. Your emotional tone is the true architect of your timeline. So how do you stabilize that tone? You ritualize resonance. You wake up and choose posture before thought. You speak from alignment even when you're unsure. You stop negotiating with versions of you that no longer have a vote. You stop revisiting old roles for comfort. There's power in repetition. Not the mechanical kind, the conscious kind. Repeating the signal of your future self until it becomes your reflex. Until it lives in your cells, not just in your notes. This is not about obsession. It's about integration. You don't need another blueprint. You need to stop toggling between frequencies. The longer you hold one, the more reality bends to it. Because the field has one loyalty: coherence. And coherence can't exist where you're trying to prove, justify, or perform. It only thrives in truth. And your truth doesn't need validation. It needs velocity, movement based on clarity. Not loud, but exact. Not reactive, but rooted. That's how the new reality lands, not as a surprise, but as a match. A mirrored response to the clarity you chose in silence. So take inventory now. What are you still rehearsing that no longer reflects your becoming? What reactions, identities, obligations still pull you off signal? You can bless them, you can thank them, but it's time to release them, not because you're ungrateful, because you're updated. The new version of you isn't better, it's truer, more precise, more distilled. It doesn't need to convince the world it's arrived. It just starts walking, starts speaking, starts vibrating in a way that makes the world respond differently without being asked. This is what it means to become the shift, to live from signal, not situation. And when that becomes your way of being, the timeline can't help but accelerate. Because you're no longer interrupting the field with confusion. You're broadcasting clarity. So let me ask you this. What would happen if you held your next level frequency for 7 days without collapsing? No scanning for signs. No adjusting for comfort. Just holding. What would change? What would vanish? What would appear? That's the challenge. That's the test. And I want to hear your signal. Tell me below, what version of you are you anchoring right now? What did you release to get here? What moment of silence finally felt like truth? Share your journey in the comments. Your story is not just yours, it might activate someone else. If this video stirred something in you, don't let it fade. Subscribe to this channel not just for content, but for community. Here, we don't chase proof, we become it. And every time you return, you're not just watching, you're remembering who you are. And if this space feels like home for your frequency, stay. Come back. Share. Witness others becoming. Because that's the magic here. Not in the information, but in the resonance. And when we resonate together, the whole field changes. So, if this content shifted something inside you, subscribe now, like the video, and share it with someone ready to jump. And comment below. What was your biggest insight? What truth hit your nervous system like a remembering? Let's expand together. Signal by signal. Story by story. Shift by shift.